To kill a nation, you don't just bomb its cities, you have to erase its memory. While the world focused on the front lines in 2022, a darker crime was happening in the shadows. This wasn't random looting. This was a state-sponsored $100 million heist targeting the cultural soul of Ukraine. We are talking about priceless paintings vanished, ancient artifacts shattered, and entire museums burned to the ground. From the black market to the ashes of history, we are uncovering the 10 most devastating losses so far. We begin at number 10, deep in the eastern steppes, with the Polovyetskian stone women. To understand the true weight of this loss, you have to understand exactly what you are looking at. These aren't just rocks found in a field. These are the Babas. They are sacred sentinels carved between the 9th and 13th centuries by the Cumans and Polovyetskians. These were the ancient nomadic warriors who ruled these grasslands long before modern borders existed, long before the concept of Russia or Ukraine even existed. These statues are haunting. They stand facing the east, watching the sunrise, holding vessels of offering against their stomachs. They are the ancestors. For over 1,000 years, these gray giants stood watch on top of Mount Kremenets near the city of Izium. Think about what they have seen. They watched the golden horde of the Mongols sweep through in the 1200s, burning everything in their path. They watched the armies of the Tsars expand the empire. They stood tall through the carnage of World War II when the Nazis and the Soviets clashed on this exact same ground. Through all of that blood and fire, they remained. They were the silent, untouchable witnesses of time, but they could not survive the spring of 2022. Mount Kremenets is the highest point in the region. It offers a perfect, commanding view of the Donbass plains. Unfortunately, that geography made it a strategic hill zone. When Russian troops took the hill, they didn't treat these statues as protected heritage. They treated them as tactical cover. They treated them as sandbags. They parked their T-72s and heavy artillery right next to them, using these thousand-year-old artifacts as physical shields against Ukrainian counterfire. When the smoke finally cleared and the city was liberated, the cost was visible. One of the statues was completely pulverized, turned into gravel by a direct hit. It is simply gone. Others were pitted deep with shrapnel wounds, their faces erased by machine gun fire. A millennium of history was smashed in a single afternoon, not by accident, because nothing, not even the sacred, was allowed to stand in the way of the war machine. At number 9, we move from the rough stone of the steppe to the delicate, vibrant canvas of Maria Primachenko collection. If you don't know Maria Primachenko, you should. She wasn't just a folk artist, she was a national icon, often called the grandmother of Ukrainian painting. She suffered from polio as a child, which left her immobile for years. During that time, she poured her pain and her imagination into her art. She created a world that didn't exist, a world of vibrant, strange, colorful beasts. She painted lions with human eyes, birds made of flowers, and creatures that looked like they came from a beautiful nightmare. Her art was naive, but it was powerful. It was so powerful that when Pablo Picasso visited an exhibition of hers in Paris, he famously stopped, stared, and said, "I bow down before the artistic miracle of this brilliant Ukrainian." Her art was the visual soul of the region. Her rarest, most fragile works were housed in the Maria Primachenko Historical Museum, a small building in the Kyiv region. On the 4th day of the invasion, the war came to Ivankiv. A Russian shell didn't just clip the building, it scored a direct hit on the roof. The museum was an old building, filled with dry timber, old paper archives, and canvas. It didn't stand a chance. It turned into an inferno within minutes. But here's the incredible part of this story, the part that shows you what culture actually means to people. As the fire raged, the locals didn't run away. The security guard and nearby residents ran into the fire. Ordinary people ripped the iron bars off the windows with their bare hands to save what they could. They choked on smoke, grabbing frames off the burning walls while the roof groaned above them. They managed to pull out about 10 paintings from the destruction. They saved a fraction of the soul. But the museum itself, the intricate embroidery, the ancient ceramics, and the rest of the collection turned to ash. It was an act of cultural arson, burning away the colorful imagination of a generation in a single stroke. At number 8, the destruction scales up from a single building to an entire complex. We lost the architectural heart of the East, the Svyatogirsk Lavra. Specifically, we're talking about the All Saints Skate. You have to picture this place to understand the magnitude of the loss. Imagine a massive wooden cathedral sitting on the very edge of holy white chalk cliffs overlooking the river below. It was the largest wooden church in the entire country, a towering masterpiece built in 1912. The most amazing detail about this structure is how it was built. It was constructed in the ancient tradition without using a single iron nail. It was held together by complex jointery, by gravity, and by faith. It was a site of pilgrimage. It was a place that had survived the anti-religious purges of the Soviet Union, a place where people went to find peace. But wood, especially ancient sun-dried wood, is defenseless against modern incendiary weapons. In June 2022, as the artillery barrage intensified around the cliffs, an incendiary shell struck the main domes. The fire was instant. It was uncontrollable. There were no fire trucks, no water, no way to stop it. Monks and soldiers could only watch from a distance as the flames climbed the towers. Within hours, the walls that had stood for a century collapsed. The intricate wooden domes crashed down into the sanctuary. The structure turned into a charred skeleton against the blue sky. At number 7, the target shifted. The enemy stopped hitting art and started hitting memory. The Chernihiv Museum of Antiquities. Locals knew this building as the House of Retro. It was a beautiful Gothic revival mansion that had survived the Bolshevik Revolution and the German occupation of World War II. But the building was just the shell. The real treasure was inside. This was the region's memory bank. It housed the archives. We're talking about 10,000 cataloged items. It held personal letters from the 1800s, letting us read the private thoughts of people who lived 200 years ago. It held the diaries of farmers. It held records of births and deaths. It held rare archaeological finds from the Scythian era that were dug up in the local fields. It was the physical proof that the people of Chernihiv had a history. On March 11th, the siege of Chernihiv was brutal. A heavy missile struck the museum directly. The roof collapsed and the walls blew out. The tragedy here is different from the others. When you burn a painting, you lose beauty. But when you bomb an archive, you obliterate the truth. You destroy the evidence of how people lived. 10,000 stories about how people loved, fought, and died in this region are now buried under tons of red brick and rubble. When the archivists finally returned to the ruins, they found documents soaking in water and mud, the ink running, the history dissolving before their eyes. It was a direct strike against the collective memory of the city. We're leaving the ruins now. We're entering the crime scene. At number 6, we encounter the most bizarre and chilling case on the entire list: the bones of Kherson. To understand this theft, you have to understand the man, Prince Grigory Potemkin. In Russian imperial history, he is a giant. He was the lover of Catherine the Great, the conqueror of the Crimea, and the man who founded the modern city of Kherson in 1778. For centuries, his body rested in a marble sarcophagus inside the crypt of St. Catherine's Cathedral. He was the physical anchor of the city's imperial past. In October 2022, as the Ukrainian army was advancing and Russian forces were preparing to retreat across the Dnipro River, a special order came down. A team of soldiers and unidentified officials arrived at the cathedral. They weren't there to pray. They descended into the crypt and committed a literal political kidnapping. They opened the sarcophagus and removed the actual skeletal remains of the prince. Now ask yourself, why steal a bag of bones? You cannot auction it at Sotheby's. They did it for psychological warfare. By taking the founder's body, they were sending a message to the people of Kherson: we're taking the city's soul with us. It was an attempt to strip the city of its past, to say that without Russia, Kherson has no past. It was a grave robbery sanctioned by the state, a theft designed solely to humiliate. At number 5, the scale of the theft explodes from a single crypt to an entire building. We are talking about the mass plunder of the Kherson Art Museum. This was not a few rogue soldiers shoving paintings into their backpacks. This was a logistical operation. This was a move. Witnesses, people who lived across the street, reported seeing heavy military trucks backing up to the museum loading dock. They saw the museum surrounded by armed soldiers, but the people giving the orders weren't in uniform. They were men and women in civilian clothes, experts holding clipboards. They knew exactly what was in the collection. They had the inventory lists. For 4 days, the museum was strip-mined. Soldiers carried paintings wrapped in bed sheets. They didn't use climate-controlled crates. They tossed priceless canvases into the back of uninsulated trucks like they were loading firewood. They took the silverware. They took the statues. They took the ancient Greek icons. They took masterpieces by Ivan Shishkin and Mykola Pimonenko. They took over 10,000 items. Conservative estimates from international art appraisers value this single theft at over $70 million. When the Ukrainian forces finally liberated the city and entered the museum, the silence was deafening. They found empty frames scattered on the floor. They found broken glass. The walls were bare. The cultural heart of the city had been hollowed stowed out, packed into trucks, and driven into the occupied Crimea. One of those stolen treasures deserves its own spot on our list because it gave us the proof we needed. Number 4, Moonlight Night by Ivan Ivazovsky. You have to understand the value of this artist. Ivan Ivazovsky is the Michael Jordan of marine painters. He is the master of light on water. His paintings are what collectors call blue chip assets. They are as valuable and stable as gold bars. Russians in particular obsess over his work. This specific painting, a haunting image of the full moon reflecting on dark water from the late 19th century, was looted from the Kherson Museum during that 4-day purge. For a year, it was missing, vanished. Then, in early 2024, a shockwave went through the art world. A painting with the exact same title, the exact same description, and the exact same time period suddenly appeared at an auction house in Moscow. The starting price? Nearly $1 million. The auction house tried to claim it was a different version, but without independent verification, forensic art experts believe this is the smoking gun. It proves that these artworks aren't being protected for safety. They're being fenced. They're being liquidated. They're being turned into cash to fund the very war that destroyed the museum in the first place. Now the math stops adding up. We're leaving the millions behind. We're entering the territory of the priceless, the items that cannot be replaced no matter how much money you have. At number 3, the theft became a targeted manhunt. The target, red sunset on the Dnipro. Kuinji was a master of light. This painting is famous for a reason. The red glow of the sunset is so realistic, so intense, that when it was first exhibited in the 1800s, skeptics actually looked behind the canvas to see if there was a light bulb burning. It's a $2 million masterpiece. The director of the Mariupol Museum knew they would come for it. She was a hero. She took the painting off the wall before the city fell. She hid it in a secret location separate from the rest of the collection. She tried to outsmart the invaders. But in a city under siege, secrets are hard to keep. A collaborator, someone on the inside, reportedly betrayed her. They led Russian troops directly to the hiding spot. They didn't take everything in the room. They went straight for the Kuinji. It was seized as a trophy of the occupation, a jewel stolen specifically to humiliate the defenders of Mariupol. At number 2, we go deeper into the earth. The Hunnic diadem of Melitopol. This isn't a painting. This is a crown. Discovered in a burial site in 1948, this gold diadem dates back to the era of the Huns, the fierce warriors who challenged the Roman Empire. It's made of thin, delicate gold, encrusted with blood-red garnets and amber. It's a priceless artifact of ancient power, but it's also terrifyingly fragile. It's thousands of years old. The museum staff in Melitopol tried to save it. They hid it in a cemented cellar. They buried it under piles of old trash and cardboard to make it look worthless, but the soldiers found it. We know they took it, but the terrifying question is, how did they take it? If this delicate gold was shoved into a rough duffel bag, if it was tossed into the back of a truck next to ammunition crates, it could be bent, crushed, or snapped. One rough touch could shatter history forever. The silence regarding its condition is deafening. And finally, number 1, the ultimate prize, the Scythian gold. To understand why this is number 1, you have to understand the Scythians. They were the ancient lords of the steppe 2,000 years ago. They didn't build stone cities, they made gold. Their craftsmanship was impossibly fine, twisted, solid gold depicting animals, griffins, and warriors in perfect microscopic detail. When Russian troops took Melitopol, a squad arrived at the Museum of Local History. Witnesses described a man in a white lab coat accompanying them. He wasn't a soldier, he was an expert. He walked right past the silver. He walked past the pottery. He went straight for the gold. They extracted 198 pieces, pectoral plates, sword scabbards, heavy jewelry. The value on the black market for the gold weight alone is high, but the historical value, it is incalculable. This is the reality of the invasion. It is not just a war for land, it is a war for memory. And right now, history is being stolen, one crate at a time.